Hey, all my Capricorn friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today to talk about Saturn's entry into Pisces and Pluto tipping its toe into Aquarius this year, 2023. This is a very powerful energy as Saturn will spend approximately the next 2 years in Pisces. That's your third house. And Pluto will tip its toe for a few months into Aquarius before retrograding back to Capricorn. And then it will move into Aquarius in January 2024 for 20 years. So let's just jump right in and talk about Saturn entering Pisces, your third house. Saturn is your ruling planet. Saturn is a planet that really likes to build in the material world. It wants to see a manifestation of its efforts, and it's not really invested in quick results as much as it's an enduring energy. It's kind of like the tortoise versus the hare, willing to take the slow, steady pace of creation to build something sustainable versus something that will be flimsy or based on potentials. So here, when we see Saturn entering your third house, and let's kind of talk a little bit more about Saturn's mundane sort of dynamics. So Saturn rules history, authority, tradition, duty, karma, in the sense of karmic choices. It represents determination, discipline, what is sustainable. It requires accountability, commitment. It rules old age. It rules the end of life or the last chapters of life. It rules the father. It rules our public status, where people see and observe our behaviors and actions. And it also is a sign of leadership, and it manifests wealth. It's a very powerful sign to manifest wealth. And yet this is wealth that oftentimes is delayed in some ways, because again, Saturn requires putting in the time and the effort. Now, when Saturn moves into Pisces, initially, okay, Saturn has been in its signs of rulership. First, it was in Capricorn back in 2020. Then it moved into Aquarius. So Saturn's really felt its mojo in these two signs, co-ruling Aquarius and ruling Capricorn. Now, when it moves into Pisces, initially it may feel very different, almost like a big wet blanket has been thrown over the landscape. And at the same time, when we take a second look at this energy, it's complementary. Saturn rules history, Pisces rules ancestral history, past lives, karmic energies that we bring into this current incarnation to help support our evolution. So I think that while we're moving, Saturn's going to move 0 to 7 degrees in the year 2023. The year 2023 is a 7. We have had, or will have, by the time we get to the Aries season, 7 full moons at the 16th degree, which reduces down to a 7. In numerology, the 7 represents introspection from an intellectual point of view. It's very Libran in that it observes, assesses, and then weighs pros and cons, but not with an emotional investment, with more like a judge in a courtroom. What's fair and what's not fair, and how does it serve the bigger picture? So we're going to see this energy superimposed on your third house. When we think of the third house, and again, Pisces also rules creativity. It rules poetry, dance, song, meaning song and music, instrumental music. It represents fantasy and filmography in this sort of dreamy place inside the human experience. It is also a house that feels a bit of solitude and isolation. It is a house where it's the 12th house in the natural wheel. It is where we leave the physical and reemerge into the collective. And it's a place where within the human structure, we store things to be unseen. So this is a place where we'll see mental hospitals, regular hospitals, orphanages, old age homes. It represents places, Piscean energy represents places of quiet, places of where there's not a lot of interaction. And in some ways, it can have the energy of feeling unseen. So, meaning it's the 12th house is behind the first house. The 12th house is the house of self-undoing, the house of hidden enemies, the house of karma, the house of troubles. And I think that it's determined that way because Pisces in nature is compassionate and empathetic. So it hears a sad story and it doesn't really connect to the co-creation of the sad story, but rather just the sad story. So here we're seeing Saturn coming in and going, wait a minute, are we going to continue to base our future on our sad story? The third house is naturally ruled by Gemini, so it governs where we teach, where we read, what we think, what we speak. It governs our roadways, our everyday activities, such as picking up the kids from school, running errands, going to and fro to work. It, to me, is the busiest house of the whole zodiac, because especially in this new age and with technology, there are so many ways and so many avenues to create work, to create experiences with other people, and our communities have broadened as a result of technology. So I think that Saturn moving into Pisces and going through this first 7 degrees is going to give Capricorn an opportunity to review historic dynamics within your third house. What do I historically think about? Do I focus on the more challenging dynamics? Do I focus in on what I'm afraid of, because Saturn can rule fear? Do I focus on my historic experiences? Where am I inadvertently putting myself within my community, outside of the community? And I'm not saying that you haven't experienced challenging endeavors, but I think Saturn's coming in here to sort of break up any self-deceptions. When I think about the house of hidden enemies, it can be people outside of yourself, but it can also be hidden imprints within our own psyche that we don't really recognize. We just think that that's the way it is. That's who I am. That's how I am. And yet at the same time, these could be things that we've experienced that have left imprints upon our human experience, but yet our soul is yearning to evolve beyond them. And that's what I think Saturn is talking about. And that's why Saturn is looking for discipline and for endurance as you review the history of how you may have interacted with your siblings, with your workmates, your teammates. I remember when I was in grammar school, I got teased like unbelievably. I mean, to the point where it even went into my junior high years, and I couldn't help but feel just picked on. And that experience, while I'm aware that it happened to a 10-year-old little girl, I'm not 10 years old anymore, it still has an imprint somewhere. So I think this is where Pisces, Capricorn is asking you to look at your third house Pisces imprint and to offer you opportunities to shift that imprint. And I don't mean to get rid of it, but to be aware of it so that you can look at that disruption and transmute it into something that's a divine disruption that actually allows you to garnish wisdom and understanding from it versus feeling victimized by it and feeling put out to pasture is a little bit of a way I want to say that, because it feels almost as if this is such a communal house. It could be an experience where you have challenges with your siblings. The third house absolutely rules siblings and cousins. And here there could be an opportunity to disconnect from that experience emotionally so that you can operate within it without feeling lessened by it or unseen within it. I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything else that I want to really kind of hit on with the whole Pisces and 12th house dynamics superimposed upon your third house. So overall, the challenges of this are going to be addiction, which I didn't really bring up. And sometimes, we think of addiction as outside of ourselves. We take drugs, we drink alcohol, but sometimes we're addicted to our point of view. We're addicted to our righteousness within our victimhood. And I'm not saying Capricorn is sitting on a platform of victimhood, but here, this is where Capricorn Saturn is asking you to move beyond that in a way of enduring the initial emotional shock. That's what I think as Saturn moves into Pisces. Initially, it feels like, whoa. And then as it retrogrades, I get an opportunity to review between June and November. I get to sort of assimilate what I've experienced in this initial infusion of energy. And then as it moves forward again, meaning in November, I can really start to anchor in and root what I have surmised and what I have transmuted. And this is where Capricorn and Saturn rewards. So I don't want you to get too caught up in the dark side of Capricorn. So many people do, and I actually think that Saturn is one of your best friends. Saturn rules the father. It rules old age. It rules reward within that old age, because you've walked through the human experience in a way that has allowed you to garnish wisdom through your historical journey. And the other challenge, I think, a little bit here is blurred lines, healthy boundaries. So if indeed your third house, Saturn is bringing up any issues with your siblings or your cousins or family dynamic there, then this is an opportunity for you to emotionally disconnect from any reactionary energies. And that doesn't have to be your own. It could be the reactions of others. And as you disconnect from the emotional and start to look at it more from an intellectual place, you might actually start to notice the historic patterns within those around you and have more empathy for them. And I don't mean empathy in a way that's going to fix it for them, as much as it may be you just see them writhing and wiggling and out of balance, and you're like, okay, I'm not joining you in that party. I'm going to stay over here and mind my own business until you get over it. Okay, now let's talk about Pluto tipping its toe into Aquarius. Aquarius is your second house. And I think this is really kind of fabulous because by nature, Capricorn builds. And I was going to say builds money, because you do. And now we're in a house of money where Pluto rules billionaires. So, and it's entering a house of liberation and freedom. So you may find yourself actually rebelling against some of the traditional labels that have been put on you. Capricorn, there's so many hues and colors to the Capricorn energy, because the aspects, the houses, the degrees all play in here. So what I want to say is that I think that Pluto dipping its toe and staying at the 0 degree in Aquarius is going to give Capricorn more of a deep awareness of a psychological imprint that you have about money or about your self-worth. The second house naturally is ruled by Taurus, so it rules my possessions, it rules my skills, my ability to make money, it rules my self-worth as I have processed it internally in relation to the experiences I had with my family. So I think this is really an opportunity to liberate yourself and to become aware of things, not in a way where you judge them and you feel this sort of repelling energy, but more it's this wisdom of understanding the veil of the human experience and how the soul comes in here with the greatest of intentions to just, evolve, and yet it can get caught up in the old structures of human dynamics and inadvertently may take a while to recalibrate itself. And that's where I think Pluto at that 0 degree is sort of birthing a new opportunity for you to assimilate your own psychological imprint so that you can lift anything that's holding you back from prospering the way that you want to. Any fears, any feelings of isolation or depression that may be coming up. So this is powerful. Pluto will enter Aquarius on March 23rd. So here we see Saturn entering in the early part of March 7th into Pisces, and then just a little over less than 2 weeks later, Pluto is moving into Aquarius. These two 0 degree energies feel very as if almost like I feel like I see a baby being birthed. And as it comes out of the birth canal, the cold air and the jarring feeling of coming out into the physical, makes you want to brace. And that's kind of how I interpret this energy. And at the same time, I think it's an opportunity to really kind of sit a little bit in observation so that you can take intentional actions versus reactions. So as Pluto enters Aries, it's going to, Pluto enters Aquarius, it's going to stay at the 0 degree in Aquarius in 2023. It will retrograde on May 1st and enter back into Capricorn on the 11th of June. Capricorn, this is your first house. It's going to enter those last degrees. It's going to go all the way to 27 degrees before it moves forward again in October, and then starts to permanently reside in Aquarius in January 2024 for the next 20 years. So when Pluto re-enters Capricorn, your first house, it's going to be like a fine-tooth comb, really looking at those structures at those last degrees, the 27th degree, the 28th degree, and the 29th degree. So we're looking 27 degrees is the Gemini degree. How am I thinking? What am I thinking? The 27 reduces down to a 9, the culmination of a cycle. The 28th degree is this Cancerian degree, that is, how am I nurturing myself? Am I trusting my inner gut? Again, the 28th and 29th degree are very powerful, and they both reduce down to a 1. So Gemini represents thought. The 28th and the 29th degree represents mastering of thought. And the mastering is not being able to control it. It's an awareness of it. So when your thoughts get out of alignment, you can turn your head in a new direction. It doesn't mean that it's an effortless shift. It just means the awareness starts to recalibrate the energy. So I think this is super, super important. And then as we move back into that 0 degree of Aquarius in January of 2024, I feel like Capricorn will be better equipped to build more money, to build more harmony and wealth within themselves. I really love the energy of Pluto, in the sense of, initially people talk about Pluto as death and decay. And how I've seen it is, it's the death of human structures that actually disempower us, but we have become so used to them that I would rather commingle my money with you or commingle my body with you, because somehow that makes me feel safe. But that safety is not really as rooted as Saturn would like it to be. So Pluto comes in and starts to bring in this information and bubbles up the toxic energy from beneath the surface. So this is very powerful, because again, Pisces is going to represent things unseen as well. So this is really a lifting of anything that has been holding you back and offering you opportunities to move yourself forward on a new platform, but not without taking the beauty of your history and bringing it with you. And some of that history may be disruption, but it has turned into something that has empowered you versus pulled you back. Okay. Is there anything else I want to say about Pluto right now? I don't think so. Okay. All right. So let's start with some dates for the spring that I think is super important. I touched on, and I'm going to briefly recap. The month of March feels like the energy is super palatable in the change, because having Saturn in at the 0 degree and having Pluto at the 0 degree is, again, this birthing and this like force of new energy, this and so that's going to be very palatable. As you feel these things, I don't know if it's about taking action on them as much as it's about observing before taking action. Being aware of any reactions you have and then taking a pause, because the reaction will be imprinted from a historic place, and the pause will give you an opportunity to decide if that's actually current in this chapter of your life. On April 19th, we will see a solar eclipse at 29 degrees 50 minutes of Aries, on the cusp of Taurus, your 4th and 5th house. This to me is very powerful because we have had this series of full moons, which is bringing this illumination going through the 1st and the 7th house. Meaning it started with the Aries full moon and it will culminate with the Libra full moon in Aries season. So I feel as if that layer and then this eclipse coming up with Aries on the cusp of your 4th and 5th house gives me some sort of reconciliation with my home upbringing, an awareness of how I'm nurturing myself, an awareness of the elements of, am I trusting my gut, my intuition? Am I paying too much attention to the structures that are around me that have been imposed upon me? And how am I processing them on the inside to give myself permissions to enjoy that 5th house energy? The Taurus energy is going to be a bit of a theme because we're going to see Jupiter move into Taurus and we're going to see Pluto making aspects to Jupiter as we move forward in the spring. So anything that Capricorn wants to build within their 5th house, you could want to start a family, meaning the conception of children, your personal pleasure and enjoyment, your sense of romance. And I want to offer it this way because by nature, most people just think of Capricorn as the old goat. And I have to tell you, I think of it as the baby goat. I think of it as this happy-go-lucky little creature that just cannot bounce enough. And when we start to look at Capricorn that way, it really gives a lot of, it infuses a whole new energy to that endurance, to that willingness to go the distance. Okay, so that's going to be super powerful. We will see Pluto retrograde in your 2nd house of Aquarius and on the 1st of May. And what we will be experiencing is Aquarius making squares to the nodes. This particular day I wrote down, but it's sort of happening throughout this whole period of time. The nodes have been on the Scorpio-Taurus axis. They're moving into the early degrees before they move into the Libra-Aries axis in the middle of this year. So I think that this is really where Pluto is. Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto is the natural opposition planet to Taurus's Venus. So I think what we're looking at here is an opportunity to really look at the South Node representing ancestral patterns of my soul, my beliefs. I'm not good enough. I haven't worked hard enough. There are people that have had this idea already. And I think all those energies are not serving Capricorn. The North Node is representing an experience that you are unfamiliar with, something you're stretching for in this lifetime. It almost feels a little bit like it's that brass ring at the end of that journey. So here I want to offer the opportunity that Pluto, while it goes retrograde and it's staying at the 0 degree of Aquarius for a lot of this period of time, it's giving you an opportunity to really look at where have you given yourself permission to be your unique self, the genius that Aquarius represents, an innovation that really represents the landscape moving forward. The history, the path we walk today is the history of tomorrow, and Capricorn rules history. So I think this is super important to pay attention to, and not to, and let me say this about the squares as well, because I absolutely believe this is true. I believe that what a square is a tense conversation between an old patterned way of being and an evolved part of myself that I am consciously fostering and nurturing in my lifetime. And sometimes certain experiences come up and we have this initial reaction that goes towards our patterned way of being. And then the awareness that we have is what creates the tension of trying to stretch to be the new energy, to be the one that's not tested, that's not been rooted into my psyche deep enough yet. I have to effort a bit that direction. So here now, what we're seeing in that square between Pluto and the nodes is the awareness of a change in the way you're thinking and that it is not completely natural yet. On the 5th of May, we will have a lunar eclipse at 14 degrees Scorpio in your 11th house at 10:34 a.m. Pacific time. This is very powerful to me because it is making an opposition to the sun in your 5th house, and the sun will be at 14 degrees with an exact conjunction to Uranus. Uranus rules Aquarius. Aquarius is your 2nd house, and this is an opportunity to really look at that deep psychological imprint that may have held you back from really birthing yourself in a way that allows for your hopes and dreams to come true. When I look at this Scorpio 11th house, I'm not necessarily going to the 11th house of the World Wide Web. I feel like this is a more personal journey for you, as if this is really about your hopes and your dreams. The 11th house is a Upachaya house, which rewards over time. It rules our hopes and dreams, and it is also a money house. And that's kind of what I'm focusing in on. I feel as if there's going to be a lunar eclipse is the full moon cycle. So there's this illumination, this culmination of anywhere you've held yourself back. And now I'm feeling like I'm liberating myself into those fifth house ideas. These ideas are things that bring me joy. The fifth house is fun, pleasure, personal pleasure, not about other people. I mean, it is about the conception of children, but I don't know if it's necessarily about the raising of children. That's more fourth house energy. So I think this is about Capricorn in many ways birthing their own inner child out into the world in a new way that's innovative and progressive to where they have been before. And that's why I think this lunar eclipse is so powerful. This eclipse season, this particular eclipse, this lunar eclipse is triggering the eclipses from 2022. So you may want to look back at that period of time in October and what was being triggered for you then, because there's going to be a revisit of it here and an ability to come to a conclusion about it. On the 16th of May, we will see Pluto at 0 degrees, still retrograde in your second house, making a square to Jupiter, entering Taurus, your fifth house, and Jupiter is starting a conjunction with the North Node. So an expansion and a ravenous feeling of wanting to move that story forward. Really, you know, the thing about Capricorn and being the builder is sometimes I think Capricorn purports physical behaviors and tries to move the story forward in a way that's a little bit too efforting. So during this square period of time, I think it's an opportunity to assess how now giving the universe an opportunity to bring in a dynamic that then inspires or is some sort of motivator into what is the next natural logical step. Again, there is this square creating a tense moment between what I'm used to being and how I'm used to thinking and moving my story forward in a new, innovative way. Aquarius is invention and things that have not been, you know, established in the earthly plane, and yet oftentimes invention brings ease. So I think that's important to note here. On the 20th of May, Mars will enter Leo, and is Mars happy to do that after spending so much time in Gemini? And it didn't mind being in Gemini, but it felt thwarted, as if it was being held back. And I believe Mars was in Gemini to re-examine how Mars thinks, speaks, and how it becomes engaging to others, as Gemini rules the third house naturally. So here, as it moves into Leo, which is your eighth house, it's making an opposition to Pluto in your second house. Again, Pluto is retrograde. So this feels very transformational, and it feels, again, like it's playing a bit to that eclipse, because the eighth house is naturally ruled by Scorpio. This influence, this Mars entering Leo and making an opposition to Pluto, is also making a T-square to Jupiter and the North Node in your fifth house. So this influence, it'll be felt for about 2 weeks. And I think what it's doing is this birthing of this willingness to look at, first of all, the second and eighth house access. The second house is where I make money from my skills, and the eighth house is where I'm commingling my money in some way. I may have money, but it's commingled. It can be, you know, through a marriage. It can be through commingling my money with a financial planner who's making me money. It can be inheritances, those kind of energies. So here, I think that the transformation for Capricorn is a couple things. I think this is about Capricorn wanting to exercise their skills. I think that the transformation that's happening in your eighth house of Leo is about being brave, about what you are capable of, and the sustainability and the viability of it, which is why it's creating this square, this T square to Jupiter and the North Node. The North Node being this ravenous point and Jupiter being my belief system. And now we're getting an opportunity to expand your beliefs. And it feels initially like it's a difficult energy. Again, this is like a 2-week, almost, let's say 16th to the 28th. And yet at the same time, I think when we get on the back side of that, Capricorn will have assimilated in a way that will make them very brave and willing to persevere. On the 2nd of June, we have Saturn in your 3rd house of Pisces making a sextile now to Jupiter and the North Node. They're both now at 3 degrees conjunct in your 5th house of Taurus, making a trine to the South Node in your 11th house of Scorpio. This is again, very powerful, and it's very powerful in a harmonious way. And this is where I feel as if it's about processing my history. I don't know if at this moment it's really about seeing the manifestation appear in the physical as much as it's really working on the imprint that lives within that will then be sort of, I want to say, balanced a little bit, because again, I don't believe we exterminate things. I don't believe we completely release them. Maybe there are some souls that are designed that way, but the majority of people, I think, kind of hang on to their story and they base their future on their history. So here, this is where now there's starting to be this infusion of hope, of seeing something more viable. And as I trust that inner knowing, that deeper knowing, Scorpio is interesting because it identifies toxic waste within the body, not only through the bowels and releasing through the anus, but also the psychological imprint. So here, I think that Saturn in Pisces is bringing you aware of the psychological imprint, and now you're reassessing in a way that's giving you a broader view of what that imprints, how it served you. And that's why all this feels like it's coming through in a more favorable way. On the 11th of June, Pluto will retrograde back into your 1st house. And again, this is going to be about revisiting any structures within your emotional, mental, and physical body that have not served you, and the further deconstruction and renovation of those. As I said, it will go retrograde until October, and then it will move forward, reconvening in Aquarius in January 2024. It will stay there for 20 years. We have Saturn going retrograde on the 17th of June, and that retrograde will continue on until November. Again, Saturn is traversing the first 7 degrees of Pisces, and while I believe this will initially feel a little bit jarring, I feel like it's an opportunity to reassess and to evaluate how I'm serving myself both creatively and spiritually. How am I nurturing my creative body? How am I nurturing my spirituality, my connection to what cannot be seen, the connection to the truth of who I am? I am not a physical human. I am a soul inhabiting a physical experience for the benefit and the prospering of not just myself, but all those I interact with during this experience. So I think that's really powerful and something to be aware of. So when you go a little bit through this up and down initially, as you head maybe what appears to be on a downslope, you're looking at things from a more objective point of view and how that journey will serve you. On the 18th, the day after Saturn goes retrograde, it will be making an exact sextile to Jupiter in your 5th house at the 7th degree. So to me, this sextile is really starting to come into balance and into harmony and peace, very Libran energies, as I experience this retrograde. And I'm brave, because it's not just about how I'm interacting with the outside world, but how I'm interacting with the interior world. We all have multiple voices within us. And it's not because we're schizophrenic, it's because we have multiple desires and multiple wants, and they come not only from a physical perception but also from a soul's perception. And this is an integration of the two, so that when we inhabit the physical experience and we have an awareness of our soul and our inner being, we walk through this experience in a very, and I want to say it, magical way. And if somebody can build magic on this earth, it's actually Capricorn, once you have deconstructed all the superimposed human structures that have held you in a pattern that hasn't truly served your complete expansion. So it's going to be a very, very powerful springtime. I think 2023 is powerful overall because it's going to give us a glimpse of the changes coming up. And when Pluto moves into Aquarius in 2024, and then when Uranus in, I think it's 2026 or 27, moves into Gemini, I think it's maybe 25, 26. I don't have that date written down. We're going to see technological changes that are beyond our conception right now. There are things being developed that are going to give us opportunities that we haven't had before, and even more connectedness on a worldwide level. So our awareness and our planting the seeds and being intentional co-creators that are not just about being accountable for what the challenges are, because on the flip side of a challenge is an opportunity. I always tell my clients, when you look at a situation, look has two O's, an opportunity and an obstacle, and both serve you. 2 coins, 1 side. And that's what this initial period is about. So that's it for me for today for my Capricorns. I hope you will join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. Pacific time, where we do our horoscopes for the coming week. We look at the transits ahead and we get the angels' advice for traversing those transits. Also, if you'd like to book a reading with me, I'm available. My information is below. And I will be back soon with your March horoscopes and our new moon in Pisces horoscopes. So please be on the lookout for that, everybody. Hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe bell, and please like and comment. All right, I'll see you soon, Capricorn. Peace out.